So let's move on to some more news, including the poison pill.
Would the senator modify his request to include unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 9051, a bill received from the House to increase recovery rebate amounts to $2,000 per individual, that the bill be read a third time and passed, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection to the modification?
Object.
Objection is heard.
So you heard it there, folks. You have Chuck Schumer arguing pretty aggressively for a vote on $2,000 relief checks to Americans, especially at a time when so many Americans are laid off, on unemployment, and desperately need the help. And Mitch McConnell has rejected it. And in lieu of a standalone bill on the direct checks to Americans, Mitch McConnell has come forth with his own proposal, which includes what's being referred to as a poison pill. It includes two other provisions that Donald Trump seems to care quite a bit about, including a commission to investigate allegations of voter fraud. Even though this has been investigated, we know that there was no widespread voter fraud. Even William Barr, through an investigation with the FBI, came forward and said there is no widespread voter fraud. Nonetheless, Trump wants that commission. He also wants to repeal Section 230, which is a liability shield for tech companies. Now, there's an interesting argument coming from progressives like David Dayen and Matt Stoller, for instance, who think, maybe it's not a bad idea for Democrats to just vote in favor of what Mitch McConnell is proposing, because who cares if they have a commission? The commission is just going to waste its time investigating something that doesn't exist. And then when it comes to Section 230, David Dayen makes an interesting point in a piece that he actually wrote for the American Prospect back in June. I'll give you those details in just a second. But John, just real quick, what do you think about the state of this legislation right now? Mitch McConnell says that he does not see a clear path to passing this legislation and getting people $2,000 checks.
What does that even mean? I don't. Yeah. It's literally, oh, there's your check. No, I'm gonna stand between you. I don't see a clear path for you to this thing that's behind me. I don't see how you're gonna make it to this. That doesn't mean anything. And I think it's pretty clear. I think that thanks to the advocacy of people like Bernie Sanders, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear in Georgia exactly who is holding this up. When even Perdue and Loeffler have to pretend that they actually support this, and then Mitch McConnell day after day is stopping it from going out there. I hope that everyone knows. But no, it doesn't make any sense. Like, whether you change this tech shield, whatever, has absolutely nothing to do with changing the dollar value listed in a piece of legislation that already exists. It's the simplest thing in the world to do as a one-off piece of legislation to add on to the previous one. You could totally do it. It's very clear what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, what McConnell is doing is essentially giving Republican lawmakers in the Senate who don't want to vote in favor of these checks some cover, because Democrats don't want to go along with Donald Trump's demands on the Election Commission and the repeal of Section 230. But what's so interesting about the history of Section 230 is how you have people from all political ideologies signing on or demanding that there are reforms to Section 230, because it does go too far in protecting some of these tech companies. So you have Democrats on record, you have Republicans on record. Obviously, you have Donald Trump on record because he's salty about Facebook and Twitter fact-checking him during the election. But let's just rewind for a second. As David Dayen notes in the American Prospect, Section 230 it basically clears these tech companies of any liability from the activities of its users. So Facebook cannot be sued for a user's post, or YouTube for an uploaded video. So how did this type of protection for tech companies come about? Well, tech companies are smart about the likelihood of retaliation or anger, frustration from its users and also from lawmakers in Congress. And so they really thought about how to solidify these protections in a way that would make it super complicated to repeal. So as Dayen writes, and again, this is something he wrote back in June of this year, before all of this, relief check debate even began. And he says, it's hard to invest much energy in what the optimal Section 230 framework will be, since big tech has already solved this potential problem in a way only they can love. Years ago, they succeeded in getting a Section 230 style provision into the reworked NAFTA, the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. And practically everybody now, incensed by the Section 230 legal immunity, willingly voted to implement it in the trade agreement. That makes it much, much more difficult to change it in any way. The provision also appears in a bilateral agreement between the United States and Japan and is expected to be a template for future deals. By the way, who was the chief negotiator of these trade deals? Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the very person who wants to repeal Section 230. And what's interesting is, since this is involved in these multilateral agreements, trade agreements, if the United States tried to unilaterally repeal it, well, it causes a problem because there are other countries involved. So it's actually very unlikely that Section 230 can effectively be repealed through Mitch McConnell's bill. So for people who are worried that repealing Section 230 will have all sorts of unintended consequences, it's going to break the internet, just know that it will be challenged. And it's actually pretty unlikely that in the end, Section 230 will be repealed. But it's just so hilarious, John, because Donald Trump was at the center of negotiating these trade deals, which included that protection for Section 230. And now he's like, I don't like it. They fact checked me, so please repeal it. My point is Democrats should vote for McConnell's bill, and they should get direct checks to Americans, period.
Yeah, maybe. With the 230, the reason is that he had no idea what it was when he was negotiating. He had nothing to do with any of it, didn't know anything what was going on. And he didn't, I guess I would say he doesn't know that he hates 230 until someone on Breitbart or Fox News told him that he did. And even that's not true, because if it actually was repealed, more of what he hates on the internet would be going on. It wouldn't actually give him the outcome that he would want, but he definitely didn't know what it was back when it was being negotiated. And I would say, related to that, I am starting to increasingly wonder, Donald Trump is getting all of this credit, even from people like us or people like Bernie Sanders, for supporting the $2,000 checks. And it's possible that he actually does want them to be sent out. He has been talking about it a lot. It's not his money, and he has no real core ideology aside from white supremacy. So sure, maybe he's okay with the money being sent out. But he has definitely been talking to Mitch McConnell, or his team has been talking to Mitch McConnell throughout this process. Mitch McConnell apparently is not interested in budging. He's not going to do it. I guess hypothetically, he could have given Trump some reason to believe that he might budge. But it's also possible that Trump has known this entire time that Mitch McConnell is not going to allow it to happen, in which case it makes it effectively free for Donald Trump to be out there saying that he wants it. And for other Republicans who, for whatever politically opportune reasons, with the runoffs or whatever, to imply too that they want something that they can rest assured is not going to happen. I don't know, because with Trump, he's such a wild card, it is possible that it just lines up with that, politically opportune motivation. But it doesn't seem to be happening. And so I wonder how much of that credit in the end he's going to have really earned.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Donald Trump is out. He's not going to be in the White House starting January 20th. Who knows what kind of stunts Republicans are going to pull maybe a few days after that. But the point is, Biden won the election. So I'm less concerned about positive marketing around Donald Trump. I do worry about this narrative that's been emerging for a year now, at least, about how the right wing, yeah, they're really the party of the working class. Come on, guys, please wake up. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we can't use some of their bad faith talking points, which I think they do for political reasons, to our advantage. But also, please be savvy enough to understand who these people really are and what motivates and drives them.
Look, can I add one more thing? Because I'm not just talking about like the marketing coming out of it. Like, sure, that's a thing that Trump is worried about. Getting credit for it is something that he would want. But whether Trump is genuinely actually pushing for it or is just publicly pushing for it, but has an understanding with Mitch McConnell, is also important in terms of the substance of it, because Republicans are not generally big fans of opposing Trump because they fear what he might do to them behind the scenes or just publicly attacking them. Like, look at how he's shredding Brian Kemp for not giving him everything he wants. Mitch McConnell does not appear to be scared of that when it comes to Donald Trump. And while Trump is speaking out in favor of the $2,000 checks, it's not like he's like shredding Mitch McConnell individually in tweets every day, which is what he generally does when he's not given what he wants. And Mitch McConnell's not giving him what he wants. So if they do have an understanding, it might be an understanding where Donald Trump gets to say that he wants it, knowing that it's not going to actually happen, but Mitch McConnell gets to stand up to him, knowing he's not actually going to be attacked.
Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, what Donald Trump is engaging in right now is hurting Republicans in the Senate runoff race in Georgia. You get what I'm saying? Like, I
mean, they're saying that they're in support of those checks. And they're generally two senators who would not be in favor of $2,000 checks. They get to say that they are, and it's not happening. They get to have their $2,000 checks and not actually provide them.
He's also, in going after Kemp and Raffensperger in Georgia, he's discouraging Republican voters from actually participating in that election. Because if they're convinced that there's overwhelming voter fraud taking place, they're going to think their vote doesn't matter. And that disempowers them. And okay, great. Fantastic. I don't know how the outcome of that election or those two races will end up being. But what I do know is this is an opportunity, I think, for Democrats to really call Mitch McConnell's bluff, and more importantly, to call these Republicans out, Republicans who claim they're in favor of these direct relief checks to Americans, but when push comes to shove, they're unlikely to vote in favor of it. What Mitch McConnell has essentially done here is create a situation where, Democrats are unlikely to vote in favor of a bill that isn't a standalone bill on the relief checks. But I think Dems should be a little bit smarter than that and understand that this is not actually going to lead to a repeal of Section 230. There absolutely should be some reforms of Section 230, to be clear on that. And the Election Commission, okay, great. So let's have yet another example of investigations showing that there's no proof of widespread voter fraud. Who cares? The point is $2,000 direct checks to Americans, incredibly important. If you don't even care about helping American people, it's a good political play. And I think if I were in the Senate, I would still vote in favor of Mitch McConnell's bill.